Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are. I am pleased today to open our Industry Alliance Symposium, Forward Together, Defining Collective Action to Amplify Our Impact in Research and Access to Innovative Therapies. My name is Eydith Ortiz, and I am the founder of Connecta Partners. We are a global consultancy that works with nonprofits, biotech, and digital health solutions companies to create patient-centered health solutions. I have had the pleasure of working with many of you as I led patient engagement efforts in prior roles at Roche, Genentech, Global Blood Therapeutics, and Biogen. So I really feel amongst friends, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to moderate what I hope will be a fantastic session. We have a phenomenal panel group that will together help us define opportunities for cross-disease, multi-stakeholder collaborations to help us advance research and access to innovation for people impacted by inherited blood disorders. I am joined as a partner in crime here as a co-moderator, along with Dr. Sandra Newton, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Eydith. What a lovely introduction. And I join you in welcoming our esteemed panelists and those that are joining us in our listening audience. We have a number of important things to discuss today, and we're hoping that the style is going to lend itself to some really fulsome discussions. So as mentioned, I'm Sandra Newton, everyone. I am based in Toronto, Canada, and I'm a member of the Gansett board. Much of my engagement is with local organizations in the Ontario, Canada area, including the Sickle Cell Awareness Group of Ontario. And that's where I do mostly direct work around patient and peer support advocacy. So very interested in things that will come out about the role of patient groups in the collaborations and work we can do together. So happy to be here for this. I just wanted to take a moment to offer some housekeeping items for us as we go through our session. All of our questions are welcome, first of all. We're going to be addressing those during the question and answer period or Q&A portion of the session. That comes later in our meeting, but I will direct you to both our chat and our Q&A area, where we're going to just keep track of the questions that come in and respond to them. So I hope everyone is familiar with those areas. So there's their screen, and we look forward to hearing what your questions are for our panelists. All right, and with that, I think we should introduce our panelists, and it's a real pleasure to do so. I will start. I want to introduce first Oluwafemi Ajayi, who is a PhD candidate at the University of South Africa and a CEO of the Gale Sickle Cell Initiative in Nigeria. And this is a not-for-profit organization that seeks to support people living with sickle cell disease. She's a patient consultant, a lived experience expert, author, and a member of different global organizations that continuously research treatments for pain and sickle cell disease. She has co-authored some publications on sickle cell and pain management and looks forward to a world without pain. So welcome to her. And Eydith. I think we're waiting on your second guest. I'm actually going to jump to our next guest, who is Ekolot. He's asked us to go with his first name, but welcome. Ekolot is a resident of Thailand. He's joining us from there and lives with severe hemophilia A. Since 2004, he has been involved with the Thai Hemophilia Patient Club. He's currently its vice president. Ekolot is also a committee member of the National Hemophilia Foundation of Thailand, and he works with other local support groups to set up a patient group. That's the Thai Rare Disease Foundation, or Thai RDF. And that group is focused on collectively raising social awareness of challenges faced by those with chronic disease. In addition to collaborating with other hemophilia patient collectives, he's participated in several workshops and was recently selected to the World Federation of Hemophilia, or WFH, Board of Directors as a lay member. Welcome, Ekolot.
I will go ahead and introduce Dr. Alison Shah. She is a clinical scientist at Roche. And Dr. Shah is a biomedical engineer by training and lead clinical scientist in product development, oncology, and hematology at Genentech Roche, or Genentech, a member of the Roche Group. She's based in Arizona, USA. Dr. Shah is a clinical scientist for 2 early phase clinical trials, Crosswalk C and Crosswalk A, that investigate complement inhibition in the treatment and prevention of pain crises in sickle cell disease.
My pleasure to introduce Dr. Jason Stoffman. Dr. Stoffman hails from the University of Manitoba here in Canada. He's a pediatric hematologist oncologist located in Winnipeg and an associate professor in the Department of Pediatrics and Child Health at the University of Manitoba. His principal clinical interests are in coagulation disorders and hemoglobinopathies in children, and he's also very involved in education and advocacy. Dr. Stoffman is the medical director for the Provincial Bleeding Disorders Program and the chair of the Manitoba Transfusion Advisory Committee. Dr. Stoffman is a previous chair of the World Federation of Hemophilia Twinning Committee and led a successful twinning partnership in Delhi, India. He is also a past president and privacy officer of the Association of Hemophilia Clinic Directors of Canada and was the inaugural chair of the Medical and Research Advisory Board at the Sickle Cell Disease Association of Canada. Currently, Dr. Stoffman is the medical liaison for the Canadian Hemophilia Society and the medical advisor for the Sickle Circle of Manitoba. Welcome.
Our next panelist is Dr. Marimelia Pita. She's a pediatric oncologist and hematologist based in Brazil. She oversees the medical residency program in the pediatric hematology department at the University of Campinas and in the division of hematology at the Samaritano Hospital, both in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Dr. Pita is also the founder of the Pediatric Committee of the Brazilian Association of Hematology and Chemotherapy and the first president of the Brazilian Congress of Pediatric Hematology. Dr. Pita advocated for pediatric hematology to be a certificate program that is recognized by the Brazil Medical Association and by the Federal Council of Medicine in Brazil. And in so doing, she advanced a partnership with both pediatrics and hematology to achieve this joint venture between the Brazilian Association of Hematology and Chemotherapy and the Brazilian Association of Pediatrics. With that, we will go ahead and move forward with our first question to the panelists. And this is to all of you. And just to kick us off, I'd love for you to share what do you see as the greatest barrier to advancing clinical research for inherited blood disorders or specifically for the community that you are part of? And I will ask Femi perhaps to kick us off.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm representing Sub-Saharan Africa and the sickle cell disease community. And when you ask that question about advancing clinical research, the first thing we must do is here in Sub-Saharan Africa, there's this mentality we have to change. Most patients don't believe in clinical research or clinical trials. They believe that all this clinical research are more, they see it as being used as lab rats or guinea pigs, and they don't know the consequences. So the first thing we are supposed to do is to educate them on the importance of clinical trials. We have to educate them about, change the mentality and educate them that it is important to participate in clinical trials. The moment we are able to create more awareness and educate and give more information about clinical trials, we will then be able to observe that, yes, more patients are eager to participate in that. And then secondly, in Nigeria, we have very few, very minute organizations that are into clinical research. You find more organizations into advocacy, and pharmaceuticals, but you don't find companies or organizations that are into clinical research. And I would use this medium to encourage those companies, probably other pharmaceutical companies or other organizations in the Western world. You could come to Africa, Nigeria, and study the environment, because like Professor Adekile said, he said sickle cell disease is not a uniform disease. Each variant is peculiar, and each geographical location is also peculiar in its challenges. For Nigeria, what you will find in Nigeria is different from what you will find, or what you will find in sub-Saharan Africa is different from what you will discover in places like America or the United Kingdom. So you have to, companies, organizations that are interested in coming to establish clinical trial here, they must study the environment as well and know what suits this geographical location, so that most of these trials or most of this research the outcomes will be positive.
Can I jump in? I was just, I think it was, I really like the way you said that people are afraid to participate because they feel like they're lab rats. Because from the clinician side, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is actually the regulatory hurdles, all the rules and processes we have to do to start a study, which is what that resonated with me, because I think we try so hard to make sure people are treated fairly. That it takes us, a year plus to turn a study on and get it going. And it just shows the importance of the education at the same time, so that we're doing all this work to make sure you don't feel like a lab rat, and that you're treated fairly, and that it's above board, that we need to make sure patients see that. But I do think, as a clinician, that's my biggest challenge, is just working through the hurdles. And to open a study at our center, on average now, it's 12 to 18 months. And the other problem I have, and this is a problem for a lot of the non-malignant hematology, but not cancers, is I try to open a sickle cell study for, that will maybe get 5 or 10 patients in, and I have to put that in a queue against a cancer study that is going to get 30 or 40 patients in very quickly. It's worse for the hemophilia studies, where I may be able to get 1 or 2 patients in, and I have to wait behind the frontline cancer trials, and by the time we get the study open, it's too late. So I've had very good studies that I wish I could participate in that I have to pass, because I'm not going to be able to get them open in time. It's just there's so much effort to open them that it's not going to be feasible to do it at our center. So I think that's a real challenge, is solving some of the rules around it, while at the same time, protecting patients' rights. We need to find a better way to smooth the system so that we can do what we need to do, but also be able to get these studies open for these small groups. And I love what you said, Femi. Every place is different. So that's why it's so important to do these multi-center international trials, so that we're not kind of trying to treat everybody like, a UK-based patient with sickle cell disease, because it's not the same in other centers. We need to understand how it is around the world.
Yes, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Maybe I can chime in with the industry perspective. Femi, what you were saying about, a lot of unique differences between patients in different regions, that is something that we really face too. I mean, from the clinical research side, I think data is really what we need. And to be able to get data that well represents the patient population, we need to make sure that we're recruiting patients across a really diverse cohort from many parts of the globe. I also come from the rare blood disease space, so this is also very difficult to meet the patients where they're at and find where they are. One way that we really tried to mitigate this is through patient education at Roche, and also resources for patients who do participate in our clinical trials. So we're really strong supporters of informed decision-making for patients. So we really consider patients' caregivers, their families to be partners in our trials. We collaborate with patients and patient advocates to design our trials and develop our patient-facing materials like informed consent or informational brochures. And we really want to support understandability of clinical research so patients don't feel like a lab rat, and they understand that they are a partner with us in this search for solutions for patients with their disease. And we also try our best, because we know clinical trials can be quite burdensome for patients and their families and caregivers. So we do try to support them as much as we can, given local regulation. Like Dr. Stoffman was saying, there can be a lot of different rules in different areas, but we do our best to try to provide services like travel reimbursements, mobile nursing for decentralized trials, because we want to really minimize the amount of disruption that we are presenting in a patient's life.
Hi, can I jump in?
Yes.
As a patient, I think the gap with the patient education still be a challenge, especially in the low middle income country. And we try to get the patient involved in the system or clinical trial, but not every patient understand about the language and the system of the clinical trial. Even the basic treatments or the treatment product that the patient they receive from the doctors, they don't know, they don't have options, or sometimes they don't know what the question that they should ask the doctors. So the patient organization they play important role in this one, because the doctor and the nurse, they don't have time to educate the patients, but the patients can educate each other. And also they develop the language to easy for the patient to understand. I used to be the part of the clinical trial. It's so difficult to understand when the language translates to my language, and I had to sometimes I have to sit down and ask the question, what this sentence mean to me, and do I understand the reach of the this clinical trial? I imagine that from some families, they don't have, they can't access to the right treatment. When they have a chance with the clinical trial, they will jump in without any question because they think that it's a good opportunity. But some clinical trial still have unknown and have a risk that they might not expect after clinical trial. So this could be mainly the education and how we develop the relationship between the doctor and the patient. The patient is more involved and not afraid to ask the question.
Dr. Peter, would you like to add?
I will talk English. That's the point. Okay. In Brazil, we have a great problem with it. We have to remember that we are talking about our country with dementials, great dementials. It's a continental country. So we have the main services that has the specialists, doctor who are who have expertise in the clinic, hematology clinic. But I think that the greater problem here is that we have less hematologists, and we have lots of patients. We don't have time to do it. Here, if you stop to do clinical research, you have to stop to see the patient. So many doctors here would like to do more clinical research, but we don't have time to do it. We don't, because if we stop to do this, we won't work, we won't have our money. So only in the universities, most of the clinical research is done. So it's very hard to us because only in demand centers like São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Bahia, etc., has this kind of way to treat our patients. But I really think that when we have a patient association which can talk with the patients and explain to them what's going on, I think it really works. In Brazil, we have about 40 sickle cell disease associations, but they do all assistance. My nonprofit association of sickle cell disease is the only one who has a doctor and a multi-professional team. So we can talk with them about the possibility to do clinical research with them. 2 years ago, we participated in a Novartis research SWAY survey. It was 2,145 patients all over the world, 16 countries, and through the social media, the digital media, we inscribed 260 patients from Brazil. They understood the great possibility, but Novartis gave them a little benefit. In a poor country, it's important. It's very important. So for these patients, maybe if you give them a kind of benefits, etc., even the drug, it will works better. But in my association, we try every day to show them the importance of the research. Education is the basic. Our patients comes to our congresses, the HEMO, the Brazilian Association of Hematology, Brazilian Association of bone marrow transplantation. They participate in this country online, and they can get in touch with the best expertisers of that disease, and then he can understand the results of the research, and then, oh, I have to do it because it will be good for me, for my children, etc. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Pita. So we have one more panelist that joined us, and Riyad, before I ask you to also chime in, I will introduce you very briefly. Riyad Albart is joining us from Canada. He's the lead member of the thalassemia community and has served as prominent roles on the board of directors of the Thalassemia Foundation of Canada for over 25 years. He's dedicated to advocating for optimal care for thalassemia and hemoglobinopathy patients across Canada and globally. He has been a board member of the Canadian Organization for Rare Disorders since 2015 and is a board member of the Network for Rare Blood Disorder Organizations. So Riyad, thank you for joining us. And I will ask you to share your thoughts on some of or what you think is the biggest barrier to advancing clinical research.
Great. No, thank you very much, Eydith and Sandra, for moderating. Good to see everyone. The barriers are many, and I think it starts with the patient education, as everybody was saying. For research, yesterday in the workshop for the North America, we had a very interesting and exciting presentation from Dr. Len Valentino, and he has talked about how the progression of including patients, how it really developed, and he talked about the lived experience expert, sorry, and he talked about how it transitioned from research subject matter to a subject matter expert, and then to being lived. And I think that was something that all the participants are interested in doing and getting there. But we need a lot of support, and that support has to come from somewhere. And I'm hoping that the industry could take a lead on that and help us build. We do have to do a lot of capacity building, but I think we have some people who are ready to go in that direction. And again, one point that was mentioned is that there are a lot of needs vary from different parts of the same country, as well as in countries that have low resources. For example, the emergency department situation that sickle cell face, even in the US, that's a huge problem, and is still lacking care and resources. The other thing is we have at the same time gene therapy. We have very advanced curative therapies that are very expensive. So there are needs for like the basic care, and then there are needs for getting the curative research, which is or curative care, which is very expensive. So how do we get those? We have to give that to the people that need it, both areas of care. The other thing we touched on was on how we can become part of the research, like patients should be involved from the beginning, from designing research. And I think that's something that I've been hearing about for many years, and so has many of you. Are we there yet? Is that happening? If it's happening, where it's happening, and why can't we have it in as many places as we can? So I just want to raise those thoughts and see how we can try and find answers. Thank you.
And Riyadh, I know that you're only with us a short time. Thank you for some very impactful food for thought while you're here. Yeah. Okay. And I really am enjoying the way that folks are just chiming in with one another. I hope we can maintain that as we go. The conversation is richer for it. The question that I'd like to pose to our panelists is, what should, and I feel like it echoes a bit of what Riyadh was speaking about and others as well, what should academic and industry researchers do to ensure that the different perspectives, experiences, and preferences of patients in different parts of the world are incorporated into development of innovative therapies? So what can academia, rather, and industry do to make sure we've got that patient piece baked in from the start? I wonder who might like to take that first. Give us their thoughts from their sector.
I can jump in quickly and get it started. You know, and I think Riyadh has talked about this, Femi talked about it. It's engaging the patients from the beginning. And you know, I was several years ago, as emicizumab was starting to come into the hemophilia market. You know, I was invited by Roche to participate in some focus groups with Canadian Hemophilia Society and patient groups and nursing groups, and really looking at, you know, as doctors, we think this will be a good thing. We think we know what patients want, but we hadn't actually asked. So we developed interviews. We got some information, and we published the paper. It was called From the Voices of the Caregivers. Really looked at, okay, what are the things that are important to families? Because I think medicine, we can get very tunnel vision. You know, we think outcomes are the big, you know, outcomes are great. Well, outcomes are, you know, in the hemophilia sector, at least, outcomes are pretty good with what we have. So what are the things that are actually important? And I, you know, I can reflect back being at a World Federation of Hemophilia meeting probably 10 years ago when the long-acting products were coming out. And I remember it was a really interesting meeting because the doctors were all thinking, well, this is great. We can treat patients less frequently. And patients said, we're okay treating 3 times a week. We want higher levels. So that was the beginning of this discussion of what's more important, the higher trough or the less frequent injections? Because I think, we thought we knew, and the patient told us something different, and then that created a whole new discussion about patient-centered outcomes, and I think that's where we need to engage the patients. We need to ask what's important to them and use that as we move forward.
Thank you for those reflections. Absolutely. Oh, sorry, was somebody going to respond? Let you go for it, and I'd like to hear from others. Go ahead.
I agree. It's all about the patient attitude. And for myself, I'm in generation with the cryoprecipitate, and the blood product is very old-fashioned. And every time that I have to get the treatment product, that means I I did something bad. I'm naughty, so I have to get a treatment, and I hate needle. So nowadays it's upside down. It's a prophylaxis. So they says, okay, you can get the factors to get the treatment, and you can go do anything you want. It's totally opposite to my generation. So with my age in low developing country, they says, okay, I'm happy with on-demand treatment, and I don't want to skip to prophylaxis program, which is it have the good and bad. They joy have a target joy, they need some factor, but they refuse to do it. So these all may be about how to change their attitude, how they see the benefit of the prophylaxis program. And also when we have a new technology like imicizumab or something, so how we can adapt it to the low middle income countries. You can see many times that they come up with a new technology, new product in the market. In the low middle income country, we cannot get at the standard dose. We have to adapt it to like a low dose or something. This thing should be support from someone to get the research that okay with the low dose or how low dose that we can get to be able to access to this new technology.
Eykawat, may I ask you, how easily are you able to communicate the ideas you've just shared to those developing the therapies? How can we bridge that kind of communication about patient preferences? What are your thoughts there? And then I'll throw to Femi for her thoughts as well.
I think some. Yep.
Let me buttress.
Sorry, Femi. I was just asking Eykawat to just complete his idea, and then I do want to hear from you.
Okay.
I apologize. Thank you.
I think that the message might have to depending on the patients. We have to choose the message to the right patients. For the patient who they educate, they understand, we give them a different message. For some some patients live in a remote area, they might not be able to understand some very complex. That's going to be the patient organization role that we have to choose the right message to the right. And what we try to do is we try to change the main attitude that we not only the passive patients, we have to try to be active patients. Our idea is so important for the physician who can design the program for us. So if you not say anything, so they don't know what you need. So this is the message for overall patient we try to give them.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for that. And Femi, I'm sorry that we had cross wires there. I would love to hear from you now, please, on this comment about hearing from patients and influencing them.
Okay, just to buttress what has been said already. One thing I would like to emphasize is the clinicians, to the stakeholders, to the researchers themselves, you need to understand that everything is existing because of the patient, So we need to prioritize the patient's voice, the patient partners. Then there are patient researchers that can also assist in whatever research you are doing. For example, let me use myself as an example. I'm doing series of research projects with other global organizations, and they keep emphasizing the place of the patient's voice. Nobody can know how bad or how much we experience this disease like the patients themselves. And the very queer, the very unique thing, I shouldn't call it unique, I should call it queer, the very core thing about sickle cell disease is it is not uniform. It's got different variants, and the way the complication comes in my body is different from the way it comes out in another person. You understand? So you need to include the patient voice. And when I say inclusion, it shouldn't be in a very minimal percentage. Let's take, for example, now, okay, let's say for Africa, I know we cannot cover everything. It's not possible, but at least there should be a large percentage that can be, let's say 50%, 65% is still okay, because without the patients, there really is no relevance for all of this. That is my standpoints on this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I wonder if others would like to chime in that haven't had a chance to so far. Just again, how do we get that patient voice in there? What are your perspectives from your sector? I know that there's a comment or two in the chat that I would like to mention as well before we transition to our next. Go ahead, Dr.
Sandra,
Pete.
I just would like to add, just to sum up everything, that sometimes doctors underestimated the understanding of patients. It's important to know that if you have time to explain, this is a disease, and with your disease, you have to do that and that, the patient, of course, will accept it. It will want to participate of this. It will bring something good for him. I think we should have more time to talk with our patients. I think that is what she said. We have to have another view, another look to our patients. You are doctor and the patients are here. No, we are specialized to be in this area. But if you want to cook, for example, you have a chef. He is the best. But here you are the best. But you have to understand exactly that you are using someone else's body. And they should participate of all our work. I think this to be with them, it would be better to talk. We only have to talk with them and try to understand, to have empathy for them. Empathy is the main word.
That's so important. Using that encounter, that patient and physician encounter, as a prime opportunity to incorporate more voice. I'm just going to mention something in the chat here. There's an anonymous poster, but I appreciate this thought. It says, adoption and implementation of the principles of community-based participatory research will go a long way instead of a top-down approach. So again, that emphasis of starting right where the folks affected are first. So thank you for that. I'm going to throw to Eydith. I know that we have more to ask.
Yes, I think that's a perfect segue to our next question, which is really, how can we work together? How can we collaborate to expand clinical research efforts in low and medium resource countries? Are there opportunities for cross-disease collaboration at a global level or regional or even local level? And let's see, perhaps we can kick things off with Dr. Stoffman.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, and we've talked a lot about the systematic barriers, and I think this is maybe where the cross-disease collaboration comes in. I mean, it's hard to do a combined sickle cell hemophilia study, but groups like Gansett and putting the different diseases together to look at how do we harmonize the processes, how do we have research collaboratives where we have patient advisors, we have patient and family engagement on the committee, so that we can sit and say, so the patients, the researchers, industry are all sitting together to say, what can we do? How do we do it? And we need to make sure, especially it's kind of seen it coming up in the chat, that we have investigators from the low and middle income countries. Because as Dr. Pita said, if you taking time off of clinical research, taking time to do clinical research means taking time away from caring for patients, which is primarily your responsibility and also how you get paid, then there's no time for it. So I think that's where the cross-disease collaboration comes in, is creating these harmonized processes where a good study coming into one of these, the inherited, non-malignant, not cancer, but the inherited bleeding disorders, can kind of come through a common pathway where we can address things in a patient-focused way, considering the unique needs of different centers, particularly low and middle income countries. How do we enable researchers to do their job? How do we facilitate the rules and the regulatory pathways? How do we make sure translation is done properly? I think that's a huge issue, right? It's the bias in North American studies is, English, French, and Spanish. And beyond that, in Manitoba, we have a huge Filipino population. So we need things translated into Tagalog. So I think that's where the cross-disease can work, is that centralized clearinghouse that then sends it in the different pathways.
Yeah. Ekwat or Femi, I think both of you brought earlier a few points that are quite relevant. Just wanted to see if you had anything to share or chime in on.
Thank you. I want to take it from a different perspective. Yes, it's good to collaborate and I support it. But what I've observed is there's a lot of focus on the urban areas. When you want to do, when people want to organize collaborative projects, I see a lot of focus on the urban areas. Remember, this is a low and medium income country. And so we have to focus also on the rural areas. In fact, the rural areas have they have more challenges. They have more demands. Because let's take, for example, there was a time in our organization, we organized a project for awareness. And we looked at it that, okay, how is it that we can achieve this? How can we achieve this cutting across? We weren't able to cut across, but we were able to reach out to about 5 to 7 other, let's say 5 other organizations on World Sickle Cell Day. And we were able to reach out to a lot of people in the rural areas. There are areas like Kebbi State, Kogi State, Kwara State, those areas that are not so civilized, or maybe I'm using the wrong word, but not the urban areas. We can do the urban. I'm not saying we shouldn't do the urban, but the rural, we should also focus on them. There are so many, there are a lot of, I have a lot of colleagues in the rural areas and they are doing a lot of good things, but unfortunately, funds are so limited. So we could come together, not even sickle cell disease alone, even hemophilia, we could all come together. Remember, the more, the merrier. When we are more, we fly higher. But when we are just in fragments, it's discouraging, and it makes you feel like, okay, it's not about, okay, I'm the one doing it best. I'm the one doing more, having more projects and all of that. No, we all must focus on the common goal. And the common goal is making lives better for the patients. It's not about the biggest organizations. It's not about the smallest organizations. It's about a unified voice, collaborative efforts to make the world better for our people.
Thank you for sharing that. It's very powerful. Ekwat, anything to add?
May I add something? Oh, yeah.
Yes, of course.
Oh, sorry. Can I jump in?
Yes, please.
Yep. My point is the treatment product is important. but sometimes it's not the most important. We as a patient, myself, I find out that alternative solution, the patient need to, as a hemophilia, we know that we need the factor concentrate. We need the medical treatment product. But exercise is so important too for our patients. How can we not just only focus on the treatment product, but other alternative approach is also important for the patients. How to do exercise, how to see the physiotherapist. This kind of program that can be a holistic program for the patients. We should introduce this, and this is really need the patient collaborative with this kind of idea too, because they have to work with this with the doctors.
Thank you. And Dr. Pita, I'll let you chime in now.
Yes. Well, I think it's important for us to say to know that we have in low-profile countries a great problem. We have basic problems, basic problems, as we have the great centers. You know, for example, I will give you an example of what occurs in Brazil. The Minister of Health provides everything to sickle cell disease: chelation, chemotherapy, new drugs when we ask, etc., etc., etc. But the Minister of Health in sickle cell disease has a registry, and in this registry they have 24,000 of patients with sickle cell disease. But we know that in Brazil we have 3,500 patients born with sickle cell disease per year. So we can prospect that we have about 60 to 100,000 patients with sickle cell disease. The Brazilian Hematology Association, I tried to do a partnership with the Minister of Health. Please let us help you to do the other things. Let's do a national registry, because when the most important entity calls the doctor, please, we have to register our patient all over the country, the doctors will say, yes, I will do it. Do you think the Minister of Health answered us? Oh, we can do it because we are already doing, etc., etc., etc. So about 80,000 patients are not receiving hydroxyurea, are not receiving chelation, are not receiving penicillin, because the Minister of Health simply doesn't know where they are. We have to know where our patients are, who they are, what's going on with them. We have to make awareness. And the global population needs to know that there is a disease, and this disease is called sickle cell disease, to include this patient. And if you call attention of the population, I'm talking about Brazil, and if you call attention of the population, this population can include. But Marmilia, why don't you think nobody knows about sickle cell disease? Nobody did in Sway survey, 45% of the population in Brazil never heard about sickle cell disease. If you talk about pneumonia, diabetes, etc., everybody knows what it is, but nobody knows what sickle cell disease is. So even to the government, it's a neglected disease because they don't know what. And why did it occur because the structural racism we have here. Because here in Brazil, we are very miscegenated. We have people phenotypically white, blue eyes, etc., who are sickle cell disease patients. So nobody here wants to say, I have sickle cell disease because it's a disease of Black people, etc., etc., etc. It's a totally stigmatized disease. So we don't have sickle cell disease centers. I'm trying to co-partnership to do it. In São Paulo, we need to do it. We are in a great center, but we don't have nothing to build a center special for sickle cell disease patient. Because when you have a special center, you can focus much more in the research, etc., etc. It's a social grade problem, but knowing where are our patients, then we can trace epidemiologic profile of this patient, and you can call awareness for public health politics.
Thank you, Dr. Pita. May I ask Dr. Shah to chime in and perhaps provide that industry perspective?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to listen to the clinicians and patient advocates on the panel because I think there was so much important content that was said. And what I'm really hearing and what I completely agree with is that to be able to bring clinical research and solutions to patients across the globe, including low and middle income countries, it's really a team effort. And that's really what we've experienced at Roche as well. So Roche is a really large company. We have a large global footprint in over 100 countries. And we've also been developing medicines for blood disorders for over 25 years. So we have a lot of institutional knowledge on how to work at every level, local, regional, national, and across the world to be able to deliver solutions to patients. And so that also means that when it comes to patient organizations, I think Femi's mentioned a couple of times about how each region, patients have different needs. They have their diverse voices. And so we incorporate local, regional, national patient advocacy groups and patients throughout our study design process. Patients influence what kinds of endpoints we look at. Because again, like Dr. Stoffman said, what we think patients might need isn't necessarily what patients themselves want. And I think it was mentioned in my intro that my background is in biomedical engineering. And one of the things we learn right away is you always have to design for the customer and what the customer wants. So we also include patients in steering committees to really help drive and shape our clinical development strategy. And, I think based off of that knowledge that we've gotten from working with patients in a lot of different locations, it's really meant that our rare disease portfolio, launching therapies in locations that don't have current treatment options, has been really central to our mission. So for example, we work in a rare blood disease called paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, or PNH. And we specifically initiated trials in China to give Chinese patients a treatment option because the existing standard of care was not present there. And our Commodore 3 study in PNH was the first China-specific study in that disease. And for our sickle cell disease program, so we have, I think it was mentioned earlier, we have 2 early phase sickle cell disease trials called Crosswalk A and Crosswalk C. And we know that sickle cell disease outcomes for patients can be really heavily influenced by socioeconomic factors. And so incorporating low and middle resource countries into our clinical trials has really been there from the start. These are 2 early phase trials, phase 1 and phase 2, and we are running them in countries designated by the American Society of Hematology as low and middle income. So this includes South Africa, Kenya, Brazil, Turkey, and Lebanon, because again, it's so important to get these diverse voices and diverse patients and really have inclusive clinical trials so that our data is really representative of the patient population. I also want to acknowledge that I think that there can be a bias in some companies that working in low and middle income countries will introduce complexities into clinical research, that those countries have less familiarity and less experience with clinical research. And I just want to say that our experience so far has really not been that. We've really seen so much motivation and so much desire from our stakeholders in those countries, and it has been really a really great experience. And I think it's all about just recognizing all those different stakeholders from all different parts of the globe as part of the overall team to really drive solutions for patients in those areas. And I know I've been talking for a long time, but I want to also address the second question about cross-disease collaboration. And I think coming from the industry side, that is always something that's very important. I mean, performing research across different diseases really gives us the ability to have a deeper understanding of not just that particular therapy, but also the mechanisms of that drive that disease in both healthy people and patients. We also know that participants with different diseases have different needs and different challenges, and there are a lot of learnings I think that we can take from running trials in PNH, as I've already mentioned, but also sickle cell disease. Both trials that we're running are using a drug that looks at complement inhibition, and so the results from those trials will help us understand more about both diseases and also better how we can support patients across the board.
Thank you, Allison. May I ask very, very quickly, or I should say, if I can have the panelists address this quickly, so we can move on to other questions. But I think there was a few interesting points that Allison brought up with regards to cross-disease collaboration. And are there other barriers to advancing clinical research that could be addressed through a cross-disease collaboration?
I just want to add a little bit from Allison just say. I know that like a pharmaceutical company, they try to get in touch with the patient organization and work through together. But sometimes with the young patient organization, they don't know how to deal with the corporate pharmaceutical company. I know that the pharmaceutical company have like a rule, and they have organization who control how to get in touch with the patient. But our patient, we don't have that kinds of things. We don't know how to work through with the industrial. So this might be the thing that we have to educate the patient organization to learn how to work with corporate industrial, something like that. We might have to come up with a pharmaceutical company, pharmaceutical policy to work, and we can understand that we're not going to take advantage to each other, and that's going to be more comfortable with the patient organization to work with the corporate. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Jason.
That's okay. I mean, I was going to say the education. I think we've talked about that a lot. I think that's a great spot for cross-disease collaboration. But I liked what Allison kind of said. The other places is some of the research platforms, and emicizumab happened in hemophilia because cancer researchers were working with monoclonal antibodies. So we had technology in one sphere that moved into another sphere, and we have complement inhibition for diseases that is now shifting into sickle cell disease. So I think that's another place where and that will likely be industry that has to lead that, to say, hey, I've got a technology that seems to work really well in this disease. Maybe it could work over here too, and can we translate it across? And then you're building on something established and just adapting it into a new model. And I mean that's the exciting part of kind of our new understanding of disease just in general, that we start to see common themes across diseases that we can address with common treatment approaches.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the first step in drug development is really to understand the disease and the biological pathways that can serve as a therapeutic target. And I mean, that's a difficult step. But for sure, I mean, I think for this part, I mean, we also really rely a lot on academic researchers to really perform basic science and help us really understand these pathways. But then, like I said earlier, like Dr. Jason's been saying, many disorders do share similar biological pathways, and it can make sense to apply a learning from one area to another. And, I've kind of mentioned that we're looking at complement inhibition in PNH and sickle cell, but it's broader. We also are looking at another rare disease, atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome, and also lupus nephritis, because there's a lot of shared biology between all of those diseases.
Right, appreciate that. Thank you very much. I just thought it was very rich conversation there. I do want to just make a note to some of the things in the chat that have come up in response to what you've been saying. There's agreement from one of our posters about needing to work together to create that sickle cell free community. This person says, I think they were responding to Femi's comment at the time. And then another person has expressed interest in having newborn screening in Belize. So people are thinking about their local areas and what they'd like to see come to those places. I think I want to pick up on something that Ekwat mentioned as I direct my next question to him and to Femi as folks that are from patient advocacy and patient group organizations. Ekwat, you mentioned, for example, that a lot of organizations, patient organizations may not know how to interface with industry, right, or pharma. They don't know how to do that. Very interested in knowing how you address that. How do you build that capacity? And it's kind of dovetailing on this next question, which says, as patient representatives, what are the common hurdles or challenges you face when trying to advance efforts to educate patient communities about research? So you just mentioned not having that experience. Can you build on that? Are there other barriers or hurdles that you have to overcome to try to bring that clinical and community/patient piece together? And I would love to hear what Femi would respond with as well. Please go ahead. You can start.
Thank
Go ahead,
you.
Femi. Okay, I think Femi's taking it.
Okay.
And then Echo.
No, he can go ahead. He can go ahead.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You go first. Femi. Okay, I jump in. Yes, I think because of hemophilia, we have World Federation of Hemophilia. We have a lot of best practice from other countries. It's easy for me to start to work with the industrial because we have education, we have knowledge about that. But if we talk about other disease or sickle cell group, they're very young. I think we need the doctors to guide the patient's organization. When we talk about patient organization, it's not only the patients. We include the family members, we include volunteer. And I think the doctor is playing most important role in the patient organization, especially in the Southeast Asia, in the low middle income countries, because the patient, they don't know how to start. They just want to get a treatment. They just want to get a better quality of life. But they don't see the benefit of having patient organization. But the doctor, they know, they have sample, they learn from other countries, from the Western style. So the doctor can be a good source for the patient organization. And also the government representative or government part in Thailand, we have National Health Security Office that they help us to develop the education and the knowledge, and also how to work with the industrial in the win-win situation. And that is time to time to learn from this. I also joined the Thai Rare Disease Foundation, which is we collect all the rare disease group together, and we share our experience to work with the industrial too, how to write proposals to get the fund. When we work together, how we can have some certain rule that we should follow. I think it's time to time, step by step, to learn these kinds of things. And with the young patient organization, they should aware about this and try to get some knowledge about this.
All right, thank you. And I will ask Femi now to comment on her thoughts on that, especially as it shows up locally. What are some of those barriers and how do you overcome them so that we can close this gap, encourage a lot more direct collaboration? What's the situation where you are?
Okay, like I said earlier, here there's this funny mentality about clinical research, but then educating individuals and patients communities here is restricted because there isn't much knowledge about it. So first of all, although speaking for myself personally, I know much about the importance of clinical research and all that because I also participate, but for other patients and caregivers as well, they don't have much knowledge about it. Most of the projects I've been involved in, I've had to correspond with a few members of my organization and explain in details, this is what this entails, and make sure you're not explaining to them in a way that it is forceful. Let them understand that this thing is a voluntary thing you are doing. You're not forced, you're not under any, how do I put it? You are not under any
pressure.
Yes, you're not under any pressure to go into it. And then apart from that, let the organizations interested in the clinical research correspond with the patient organizations, then they can talk to the caregivers and the patients themselves. Remember, some of these patients are children, so they probably don't have much knowledge. But when you talk to their caregivers and you make them understand that, okay, these are the things that we want to do, then they will have a better understanding. So the first place we should start from is to educate. Let people know the importance, because here we talk a lot about awareness, genotype compatibility, newborn screening, blood transfusions and all of that. But clinical trials, discussions and awareness or education about it is very minimal. So we must prioritize information about it. From that, then we'll know about it and decide, okay, this is the way forward about clinical research. Thank you.
Thank you. I've heard across your comments and Echo, just, understanding, folks understanding and the education piece. Any comments from both of you just about what we are doing or what you're seeing as current efforts to boost that education? I know that that's the key to so much. What are we doing locally to try to increase that understanding, even given some of the urban versus rural issues you've mentioned? What are some of your key vehicles for the education piece and boosting that?
Another thing is, I think, build up a relationship with stakeholders. I have been in many workshops with capacity building and get back to my country, and I got nothing. It's so difficult to implement it. We know we educate our patient, but in real life, it's not easy. If you not get the trust, you not get the relationship with the government part, with the doctors part, and industry. So the patient have to learn how to grow these all stakeholders together and get support in the right way. Yeah.
It sounds like that's very hard. It sounds like you and Femi are those people, though, who are kind of the bridge for the trust. Would you agree that you have taken on some of that? Because of trust in you, you're able to communicate the messages, but it's still difficult to get the buy-in.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
If we have the patient will be a bridge on the, I think it might make more sense, because like in the beginning part, we said, we do everything for our patients. Without the patient, we might not be here. So I think if the patient is the center of everything, they should be realized that and try to get everybody together.
Can I'm thinking about what you just said, Ekwat, and what you said earlier about how in some places there are no patient groups. You need the doctors to do it, and I wonder if that's that. You know, there's an immediate trusting relationship between the doctors and the patients and the families, and I think that's where, as the physicians, as the clinicians, we have opportunity, but also that obligation to help to bridge that forward. When it looks at clinical research, you know, our patients and everywhere are looking to us to say, you know, this is a good, when I talk to families about clinical trials and we talk about regular, I say, you know, I wouldn't offer this if I didn't think this was a good option for you. You know, and I think that's the beginnings of it. And that's why it's so important to have the doctors working with the advocacy groups. And I think that's, you know, being able to be there just to connect, make that connection. Like it's, you know, my role with the Canadian Hemophilia Society is really just to be that bridge between the patient group and the doctors group and kind of represent each to the other one. And I think, because you're right, relationship is so key to moving anything forward. And it often for patient advocacy group starts with that initial doctor-patient relationship and can grow from there. So I think it's valuable to have these kind of discussions where we can bring industry and patients and physicians and allied health eventually together to say, how do we as a team work to move things forward?
There is that intermediary, though, that we need to identify for each situation. Sorry, Dr. Shia.
I just wanted to add from the industry perspective, I think I mentioned earlier that, you know, for Roche, patient education is really important. And we try to really educate from multiple areas. So we have a lot of materials that help explain, you know, specific clinical trials to potential participants and also participants on the trial. It's really important to us that patients understand the benefits and the risks of what that clinical trial means to them. And as Femi was saying before, it's a choice. So we really try to present that information in an unbiased way so that the patient and their caregivers, their family, they can really make that decision together of what is best for them. And I also wanted to mention that on top of that, we understand also that you know, we're trying to reach a really broad pool of patients. So as a company, we've released videos available in the public domain online that just explain very broadly what a clinical trial even is. You know, what are the general benefits and risks of engaging with clinical research to help as an introductory tool for participants who may not have even heard of clinical research.
That utility of other ways of conveying information, relationships, yes, and also resources of all sorts, video material. And I know that Dr. Pita mentioned earlier, even language being so key, that we share information in to increase that access all the more. All right, thank you. I really appreciated that back and forth. I'll throw to Eydith.
Thank you. And thank you to all the panelists for a very engaging dialogue. Before we move on, though, to the Q&A section, we have one last question for all of you. And I will ask you all to make it as brief as possible, just so we can have enough time for the Q&A with the audience. So I know we talked about a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunity, really, for cross-disease collaboration and collaboration in general to help address some of those challenges. So if you had a magic wand and you could solve or address one significant issue or challenge through cross-disease multi-stakeholder collaboration, what issue or challenge would you choose? And perhaps we could kick things off with Dr. Stoughton.
I've been thinking about this one, and I don't want to say get rid of the rules, but I'd fix the rules, because we need the rules. The rules are there for a good reason, but we'd fix the rules, and and not just the regulatory rules, but Dr. Xu kind of mentioned the industry regulatory rules, right? It's like we have all these issues about what industry can and can't do, and what they can and can't say, and how all those. If we could just fix the rules so that we could take a good research project and just do it and make it happen. And it's interesting, echo what you mentioned, cryoprecipitate. I remember reading the original discovery of cryoprecipitate was Dr. Poole was in a lab, made cryoprecipitate, said, hey, this looks great, took it to the clinic and gave it to a patient. Like, I'd love to be able to get to this. We've got a great product. Let's just go give it to patients and see what happens in a controlled, safe way, but get through 2 years of regulatory stuff to get it happening.
Ekwat, perhaps you want to share?
I would say I would like to give a positive thinking to every patient who have any health condition. Well, let's say for everybody, because I think everybody used to have some health condition. We used to be a patient, absolutely. But I think a positive thinking is so important. It might easier for me because I born with hemophilia. So I be with hemophilia as my friends. And I have today because of hemophilia. It's not only the bad thing that hemophilia give me. They give me a lot of positive things. My parents focus on me a lot because I have hemophilia. And I have opportunity to meet friends. I understand life better earlier than other of my friends because of my sickness. And when I was a kid, I want to be killed, but I'm happy with hemophilia. I can be with hemophilia, and I have a happy life. I think this could be happen for every patient that have a health condition.
Thank you for sharing that. We could all use a little bit more positive thinking in our lives. Dr. Pita, do you want to share with us?
Yes. Yes. Sorry. If I had to choose only one thing for chronic patients, for chronic disease, I would say it's important for them to keep their treatments in a multi-professional hospital, multi-professional center who cares about that disease, the hemophilia, thalassemia, sickle cell disease, because everybody is focused in that disease. It's not a good thought for parents, for example. All the time they go to the emergency room. Oh, I'm bleeding. Oh, I'm making. Oh, what do you have? Oh, and tell everything again. I think we should have specific centers to treat specific disease, and it would be much easier to deal with them It would be easier to talk about clinical results, etc., because it's totally different when you have a specific center and the parents arrive, oh, she's aching all over. Oh, yes, please. It's totally the nurse include, etc., etc. No, I don't want to go to that hospital because I don't know anyone there, and I will have to start again. That's the point. That's my point of view.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Shah?
I think this was a tough question. I really wish that I did have a magic wand. I think that, if I did have one, then I would use it similarly to ECHOWAT and really enable better access to medication to patients, no matter who they are or where they are. And I think that this would bring us at Roche one step closer to our goal of really improving the lives of as many patients as possible with blood disorders.
Thank you. And we'll give the last word to Femi.
Thank you. My wish is for affordable and accessible healthcare for everyone. Let me give an example. In our support groups, we have a lot of members with leg ulcers. And leg ulcers comes in, there's a chronic one. There's a particular guy who's really going through serious pain. And when I say pain, pain comes in different levels. When I say chronic pain, real chronic pain, and this leg ulcer has deteriorated to the level where he's now on a wheelchair. Believe you me, if this guy were not in sub-Saharan Africa, if he were somewhere in the UK, in the US, the leg ulcer wouldn't deteriorate to that level, or he probably wouldn't even have leg ulcer. So my wish is whatever the clinicians, the stakeholders, the researchers, whatever, and the pharmaceuticals, whatever you all can do to come together and make accessible and affordable healthcare for us, please do it. You could adopt the Irish method. They make healthcare affordable for everybody, especially winning warriors like myself, that side. They don't have to go there and start thinking of how to pay, because the cost in itself, it gives my people a lot of headache. So they prefer to do things from their houses, and this can lead to addiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Femi, for sharing. Very powerful.
All right, with that, after amazing exchanges and ideas, and my goodness, Eydith, if you can locate that magic wand, let's get one to each of our panelists. They have plans that we'd love to see realized. I do think that there needs to be room for imagining what futures can be, and thank you all. We have some questions that have come in during the course of the discussions and turning over of questions, and just hoping we can work through those. And some are directed toward particular panelists, others are open. Let's see how we do. I'll start with the first one, and this is for Dr. Marinelia. It says, Dr. Pita, it says that you mentioned in the Novartis trial, you enrolled over 200 patients. What benefits can be offered in Brazil as per local regulations? And I'm just thinking further about what that person might be asking. Dr. Pita, any comments initially? Maybe we can get some more detail if this person is still available to elaborate, but what benefits can be offered in Brazil per local regulations? Maybe they're speaking about...
Sandra, I will ask you to repeat the questions, please. Could you please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I'm hoping that as we think about it, we'll make sure we get the essence of it. It refers to some remarks you made earlier. It says, Dr. Pita, you mentioned that in the Novartis trial, you enrolled over 200 patients. What benefit can be offered in Brazil per local regulations? And I'm wondering if that's arising from the study or asking a different question. How do you interpret that question, Dr. Pita?
Yes. Please correct me if I didn't understand the question, but I was asked what kind of benefit the patients could receive. Specifically in the case of that study, Novartis study, they gave to the patients something about $50 per each patient to fill the forms. And it's not a great money, but you know, in 48 hours, we had much more than 1,000 people trying to fill that forms. We live in a very poor country. I'd like to send to the pharma what we received from the patients. Some patients talked to us that they some went to a supermarket to bring some things. Some bought some clothes. Some bought medication to the children. Most of them were parents. And they, after the study, they sent us lots of emails thanking and audios and etc. It was really very. We become very happy to know that we benefited someone that benefited to benefit everybody. This is simple, but you have to have the money to do it, and it's a sad position. I know that. I would like everybody, every patient could participate in all of the studies by themselves, but you have some kinds of problems here, lots of them, really. That's it.
It speaks to the helpfulness of some of those, tokens and so on for patients that enable participation and furthering of the work, especially in countries where the resources are low, and it is a real sacrifice for folks. Thank you for your response to that one. I'll just go to the next one. It says, and this is from Obi and Nodu, what can industry do to ensure adequate support of clinicians conducting clinical trials in low to middle income countries, knowing that these clinicians work much harder to achieve the same results as their colleagues in high income countries with less resources? And there is a question. So what can industry do to help look at those equity pieces, especially around the clinician end? That's interesting. I wonder if there are comments from anybody on the panel, maybe those from industry and academia in particular. Any thoughts on that?
Maybe I can start, but I'd love to hear from Dr. Stockman and Dr. Pita as well. So from the industry perspective, I think things like motivation from the PI are not replaceable, but there are certain resources that we can help provide to help bridge that gap and make sure that we can work together and complete the clinical trial together. Just as some examples, I know that we have provided some of our investigators when, we know resources at their site can be very, very limited. And I think Dr. Soft and Dr. Pita have both touched on this in their talks today. And so we can provide some services depending on local regulations, like a local study coordinator that can work at the site and help support the site study team and the investigator with enrolling participants in the trial. We can also sometimes provide certain lab equipment if there's something that is missing at the local site and it's needed for the purposes of the clinical trial. Also, depending on local regulation, if we require certain medications that may be difficult for patients or the site to procure, we can also in some cases provide reimbursement for that medication if it's required for the trial, or resources to help procure that medication.
Thank you.
I would just, I just kind of second all of that. I think, I love what you started with. There's no substitute for, a committed principal investigator. You need that. But if you can, the support's there so that, the job of the PI is really oversight and not having to get too busy dealing with things. And yeah, I mean, a study coordinator, if they don't have one at the center, I know at our center, we have a great clinical trials unit, which does a lot of the work on the ground and then just tells me when I need to review things and sign things. So those are, and I think it's very specific to the center, right? Every center is going to need something a little bit different. And that's where, I've always been really pleased with whoever industry is using to run the study. I've never had a problem with those study groups where they what do you need? How can we help you? Incredibly accessible by all sorts of, I know who to email quickly and I can usually get a response within hours. So it's getting those supports in place. So, as Dr. Pita had said, you don't have to take too much time away from your clinical work to deal with the demands of the study.
All right, thank you. Did we want Dr. Pita to chime in if she had thoughts on that question? And if not, that's okay. We will hop to our next one. Just giving you an opportunity, Dr. Pita. You have drawn out some of the equity pieces very powerfully during our conversation. All right, she might come to us later. All right, Eydith, I will throw to you for the remaining questions.
Yes, we have two more questions. The first one was with regards to national registry. So George Roberts asked, how do you develop a national registry without breaking patient confidentiality?
Maybe I'll jump in and start on this one, and then Femi or Ekwat can comment on the patient side. So the word that when I saw the question was carefully. So at our national, the Association of Hemophiliac Clinic Directors of Canada, I was the president when we brought in the Canadian Bleeding Disorders Registry, which is our national registry. And that's part of how I became the privacy officer too. So we used a process, it's internationally recognized, called privacy by design, which basically says when you're going to do something that impacts privacy, you start by thinking of how you're going to address privacy. So from the very beginning, we approached the development of the registry by saying, here's what we need in it, and we need to protect our patients. And it was challenging in Canada because we wanted a national registry. Healthcare legislation in Canada is provincial. So we had to have 10 provinces with 10 different laws, all participating in one registry. So, for the CBDR, some of the biggest solution we had is it's called role-based access. So it's designed that I can see the patients at my clinic. My patients can log in through their portal and see their information. The national information is all aggregated, so there's no identifier. So if at the national level we want to pull out, how many patients with severe hemophilia A are on prophylaxis, it spits out a number. There's no names attached to it. I can see people at my clinic and I can get stats on that, and a patient can log in and see everything about them and nothing about anybody else. So, but again, it was designed, right? We designed the privacy right into it. And I think it's doable. It's very challenging. I'm not going to pretend it's not. And, even once we had built it, implementing it across the country took a couple of years because every center had to take it through their local research ethics board, their local hospital privacy commissions, address it. But because we had designed it carefully from the beginning, it wasn't a big problem. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice is if you're going to build a registry, start by going, what are the privacy considerations? Don't wait till it's done and go, okay, now is it good? Because if it's not, you're going to have to rebuild it. So that's my biggest advice is start by thinking of it. So I think that's a great question is how do we do it in a privacy compliant way? So.
Yes, I agree with Dr. Jason, and I think in Thailand we follow that also. Also, I think if we can have the patient representative to be involved in this program in the beginning, that helped to understand about the privacy. And I think for the patient, if they see the benefit of the national registry, they will be more comfortable and confident to join with this program.
Thank you, Aquat. Anybody else would like to chime in? No? All right, so we have one more question left. So do industry require evidence of meaningful collaborations with advocacy groups in their proposals? So I'm not sure if this is referring to regulatory filings, but I'm gonna pass it over to Dr. Shada to see if she'd like to chime in on this.
This is a great question. I'm unfortunately not the best positioned, I think, on my team to be able to answer this, but I'll make sure to bring it back to our patient partnerships colleagues. And if I don't know if this person has a way of following up with me after this panel, and I can try to get an answer from them, from someone who has more knowledge on this area.
So the person appears to be unknown here, but please reach out on our end. And I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question correctly. If it is on the kind of regulatory filing side, requirement, I think is a strong word, but I would say based on my experience that it is expected, not specifically necessarily advocacy groups, but it is expected that you are working with communities to incorporate the voice of the community actively. So I know we're a little bit short on time, but if that person wants to reach out to us, we'll make sure that we circle back to you on this. And perhaps I'll give a moment. That was the questions that we had in the Q&A. There is still time if you have anything else that you'd like to share. Let me see. Oh, we just have one more. When requesting RFPs or receiving proposals from PIs. Oh, I see.
You just expand the question, yeah.
You just expanded. Let me see. I am not sure I fully understand your question, but we will circle back to you on this.
You know, I wonder, sorry, go ahead, Ekwad. I was just going to add something. Mm-hmm.
My experience working with the pharma, it's depending on the pharma that you work with. I think you have to learn each other and build up a relationship, and but try to be in your patient organization objectives. And you, as the patient group, you have to be really focused on your patient benefits and your goal. If you see this is a project, your project, you have to stick with your key project and also your objectives. Because on the road, they have someone to ask you to do so many things, but it's not related with your objectives. You don't have to be just say goodbye and just walk through to your goal. And also you have to learn about how you get fundraising, not only from the pharma. They have other opportunities to get fundraising. But I know maybe with the pharma, it's easier, or maybe the first priority that you will think. But they have other opportunity to get that.
Thank you, Akon.
I've certainly seen press to have a strategy around engagement and returning post-study what some of those findings were and meant. I think there is that obligation to these communities giving time and effort to further knowledge. And so I've seen some, but I couldn't speak, of course, to what happens at the industry level. All right. Our final question, wasn't it?
That is our final question.
I just wanted to say that Dr. Hibio Sonko has joined the panel. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Hibio. Welcome. Sorry, you are muted for us. So sorry, at least for me. I'm not hearing you, unfortunately.
The audio.
We're still unable to hear you, unfortunately.
Okay.
And
Hey, Dr. Hibio, so sorry. Frustrating for you. I don't know whether there are any remarks you might like to place in the chat, but we are glad you joined us, and we're actually just at the point of, kind of summarizing a bit about what we talked about. Still time perhaps for you to put anything into the chat that you'd like, and thank you for that. Oh, we believe it. We know things happen. Just so it means a lot that you are back. Can I just make one mention of something in the chat as well? Someone's mentioned circling back. Oh, okay, maybe that's the person who added more detail, Dr. Odestina. It appears when PIs submit their proposals for research, or when industry send out their request for proposals, they do not require that the entity shows an evidence of partnership with an advocacy organization. So that was, I think, what prompted that question. I don't know, were someone going to comment further on that? Appreciate that question. All right, and Ecolot is letting us know, bring it home. My battery is on. And we appreciate that. It has been, believe it or not, it has been a couple hours of conversation. So phenomenal that folks have stayed with us and participated so meaningfully. Eydith, I'm happy to make any final remarks unless you would.
Please take it away.
All right, here goes. So with that, just a special thank you to all of our guests on this panel. We had physicians, we had folks from industry, we had folks from the patient advocacy sector. Each one was participating so meaningfully in what we were doing and discussing here. I want to thank, of course, each one, and Dr. Eydith Comenencia Ortiz for the fantastic exchange of ideas and recommendations for enhancing the work that we do together that were shared today. We congratulate and thank each of our panelists for their leadership in local initiatives in their organizations. We look forward to ways that we can continue to harness the power of the collective to do this important work. I certainly took away just a few quick points about the challenges being present at every level, but the opportunities as well, how important relationship is for bridge building, how important it is for us to have local understanding of the needs there in order to carry out our work effectively, and thinking about ways that we can reduce barriers at all levels. I think that's going to be ongoing sharing, and just being able to borrow from examples with other conditions to benefit the ones that we're focusing on. I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity. You will see that a poll has popped up. We'd really like folks to complete that before they head out. And following our session today, I believe at 12:45, there will be some closing remarks from Ms. Lanre Tunjiaji, the CEO of Gunstead, who will attempt to wrap up just an incredible few days of programming. All right. Having said that, let me just peek and see whether we see anything new in our chat as people perhaps fill out their evals. Let me see.
There's one question in the Q&A box, Dr. Newton.
Yes, I think that was building on previous, and I'm going to regard that as having been responded to. We were just wondering about that requirement to have a patient engagement strategy or relationship in order to further one's request for proposals. And I think that varies place to place, but I think we're pretty much in agreement that that's a huge piece of that relationship bridge we hope to build and to further our purposes together. All right, with that, I wonder if there are any parting comments. I see a question about the recording. Thank you, Femi, for your participation in that question. Maybe I can ask Ms. Lanry, who is on our call, whether there's any comment from the media team about availability of just recordings or transcripts from these meetings.
Definitely, there'll be recordings from the Congress, which will be uploaded on the website within the next few weeks. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. And just a reminder from our media team to please fill out the poll that you will have seen. Even as we close, Dr. Eydith, any parting comments, or shall we close our session today?
Well, let's close our session. Oh, no, well, not quite.
It is very challenging for the patient organization in the Southeast Asia is the languages. We have so many diversity of the language. When we have a good information, but how we can spread this out and the patient in a low middle income country, they can get this information in their own language. I just want to speak out that if we have something like this, we might have just spare some budget a little bit for the translation or the capture from other country. Yeah, thank you.
Great, another barrier reduced.
Well, I just wanted to say, if it's about this particular session, the show caption button was supposed to be used by participants, and they would see their own language if they want to listen to it in their own language. So the translation was made available. And I think Eydith mentioned that in the beginning for participants to be able to use the show caption, and they would have been able to see different languages, and they could, participate in their own language.
And it even came up during our discussion that it would be so important to have materials, educational and otherwise, in our local communities, so that would be a barrier reduced for people to really understand what the research initiatives are about. But yes, people, I think, did you take advantage of the captioning? I'm hoping, but we were also speaking about just languages for, in Brazil, there was that example given, and Eydith is also speaking about his region. That people can truly engage with what's happening in language. All right. Last comment I see, it was lamented that sickle cell didn't have a global organization to represent the world's tribe. Is it beneficial now that there's more than one, and there are a number of organizations? That's an interesting question, tough to answer, but I would imagine that the growth in the number of groups being able to represent needs in each region can only be a strength. And I think this has very much been a conference about the way we collaborate across conditions, but within as well. Just hoping that is only been beneficial. The folks are heading out, especially as we prepare for those final remarks. We close at the moment. I think that we've covered all of our goals, and hope that it's been a wonderful experience for you as it has been for us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for a great job of moderating.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Beautifully together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
You're wonderful. Bye,
Thanks for a great experience. Bye, everyone.
Hello, everybody. I'd like to thank Gensel Board for the invitation And also to say that it was a real pleasure to be here with you, talking about the inherited blood disease. I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Eydith. Wonderful participation. I had the chance to chat with you both days. I feel very lucky. All right, wonderful. All right. See everyone on the other side.